I have been stuck with my same seller for almost 2 months. They move very slow. Do I focus on this one seller or go somewhere else? All right, thank you, Michael, for that comment. If you all have any questions, please comment down below. You never know, I may make a video answering that question. In today's video, I'm going to talk about when to let a seller go. In our real estate business, you talk to sellers, to buyers. When is the proper time to politely end a relationship with a specific seller or buyer? And just with talking with a lot of leads, how do you know which leads to stick to and follow up with every month, or even every other few months, every week, every day? How do we determine when to let go of a seller, or which ones we should follow up short term or even long term? So in today's video, we're going to go over this very subject. I'm going to answer this question that Michael sent me down below in the comments. And so let's get right into it. So the first thing I want to talk about this particular subject is when beginners start cold calling and they start talking to leads, and let's say they call 100, 200, 300 people and there's no motivation in any of them. And then they call seller 301 on their list, and this seller said that they're interested in selling their property. As a beginner wholesaler, great, you have someone that said yes, but this seller has so many demands. Maybe the prices are so high, or maybe the condition of the property is not exactly where it needs to be, but you stick to that one seller. And I think that's an issue that a lot of beginners have. Just because someone says yes over the phone doesn't mean that they are a motivated seller and that you should keep on following up with them. And so as beginner wholesalers, you all have to understand to let those sellers go. And I know it can be exciting as a beginner when you finally have someone who's interested, who's actually talking to you, who's building rapport, who you feel like you're building rapport with, and they're talking about their family or vacations and about the house, but it never gets to the deal. It never progresses after that. That's when you have to shift your minds and tell yourself, is this a motivated seller? Is this a potential deal or not? But how do you determine when to let go of that seller, or if that seller is actually a lead or maybe a lead later down the road? So that's the first thing. Just because a seller is willing to talk to you and is talking to you doesn't mean that they're a motivated seller. So remember that. So the next thing I want to talk about when to let go of a seller is when the seller is talking or stating a price that's a little bit too high. Like, as wholesalers, you are trying to find properties that are lower than market value. And when a seller is talking to you over the phone, even though they're polite and caring and lovely over the phone, if they state a price that's the Zillow price or higher, you should probably reconsider if that's a motivated lead and move on. So number one, if they talk about a price that's a little too high, that's over market value, that's not a motivated seller, move on. And that's the perfect time to let go of a seller. Even though you're building rapport and they're super polite to you over the phone, you have to move on. The next thing I want to talk about is when the seller is oblivious about the condition of their property. So let's say you actually visited the property, or you have some photos of the property and you see that it needs a new roof, probably needs some foundation repair, new walls, or different things wrong with this property, but the seller is just saying, oh, there's nothing wrong with it. Oh, I can sell it for this much. Oh, this property only needs like $5,000 worth of repairs and renovation, and they're not real and transparent, or they're not in reality about their property. That's when you know maybe you should move on. But with that particular property, maybe you can follow up with them, but not as frequent as you would with other motivated sellers. So with that particular seller, I wouldn't follow up with them every day or even every week, probably once a month or even once every 2 months with a particular seller where, yes, the property is distressed, that's what we're looking for, but they're not recognizing that their property is distressed and they still want top dollar for their property, or they think that the repairs will be super low for their property. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, which is super key, is when the seller doesn't give you updates on your follow-ups. So for example, I dealt with a seller who was going through probates, and I dealt with different sellers. So on one hand, I had a seller who would give me updates. So, and this follow-up probably took 6 to 8 months long, but every time I spoke with this seller, there was a new update. Like, okay, yeah, I talked with my lawyer. I'm submitting this paper. Okay, cool. I'll call you back and check up with you in 2-3 weeks. And then I'll call that seller again and they'll say, okay, yeah, I got the paperwork submitted. They just said I need this amount of money, or I'm going to get this amount, or some sort of updates relating to this particular probate property. But then I have other probate sellers who are like, yeah, I'm still looking for a lawyer. And then I give them timelines. Okay, well, I'm going to call you in 2-3 weeks and you should find a lawyer by then, or you should have talked to your lawyer by then. And then I talk to them 2-3 weeks and they still haven't spoken to their lawyer or given me any updates. And then I speak to them in a month and still the same thing. If there's no updates with them and them progressing where they're at the point where they can sell, then that's when you should move on from that lead, or just follow up with them less frequently. And this doesn't only cover sellers who are in probate. This also covers sellers who are probably in a divorce, bankruptcy, pre-foreclosures, or other things like that, especially pre-foreclosure. If a seller is just really relaxed during a pre-foreclosure stage, then maybe they're okay with getting foreclosed. And once you're at that point, either you have to buy that property for cash or just let the seller give the property back to the bank. So make sure you have updates with all your sellers, all your follow-ups, and you have to initiate these timelines and these updates with the seller, right? They're not going to bring it upon themselves to do it. So instead of you thinking naturally they're going to say, okay, next time I talk to you, I'm going to do this. No, tell them, hey, next time I talk to you, do this, right? And I think the seller really do appreciate that. They appreciate the follow-ups and you just staying in contact with them. So the next thing I want to talk about when to let go of a seller is when they are not clear on their timeline to sell. So let's say you're talking to a seller and they state things, well, I had to find a house first outside of state or something like that. Or they say, well, I don't exactly have a timeline. I'm just looking around, just browsing, or I don't know if I'm that interested, or some sort of thing where they don't give you an exact timeline when they're looking to sell their home or even buy a new home to move into. That's when you know maybe they're just talking, maybe they're just in a stage. Because like, for example, you have cars or you have things that you're all like, maybe I should buy a new one of this. You've been thinking about it, but you never buy it and you just stick to whatever thing you had. People go through stages with their houses like that, right? They're all like, should I sell my house? The market is up, but if I sell my house, I won't be able to find another house at this price range in this neighborhood. And so you have to be able to filter through those different emotions and those different details that the seller is telling you. All right, you all. So those were some of the main points that I wanted to bring out and just answer that question that Michael sent us of when to let go of a seller. So number one, you all, just because a seller is talking to you doesn't mean that they're a motivated seller. All right, you have to look at the condition of the property, price, timeline to sell, and of course, if there's any updates along the follow-ups. If you feel like you're moving along in the follow-up, yeah, keep that seller. But if you feel like you've been stagnant for months, maybe you should go on to other leads and invest more of your time into other sellers. All right, you all, hope you all enjoyed this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment down below. Once again, any questions that you may have so I can make a video for you all answering your questions. All right, talk to you all later.